happy Monday. Come on in, pull up a chair. The Daily Dope is in the air. Howdy, 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 gang. Yes, I'm Jeff McAleer, back once again as your host here at The Daily Dope, presented by thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the grand poobah. Woohoo! Anyway, tonight is April 29th, 2019. Wow, April's already almost gone. It is episode 292 of The Daily Dope. So we are actually rapidly approaching 300 episodes of The Daily Dope, on top of the other Gaming Gang videos on the Gaming Gang channel. So pretty wild. Robert Moffat's actually popping in tonight. So Robert, howdy. He is jumping into chat. I was just about to mention that this is a live show. So if you are watching live, there is chat available on YouTube. It's not on screen. It's one of the ways that I keep some of the stranger commenters at bay. But if you've got a question, maybe you just want to say howdy, or maybe there's something about Wildlands that I am going to be showing how to play and reviewing tonight. Maybe there's something about that you'd like to find out a little more about. By all means, please chime in. I will respond. If you like the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you check out some of the videos on the Gaming Gang channel and you like them, be sure to subscribe. Don't forget to ring that little bell, because that will not only notify you when there is a new video, but it'll also tell you within about 5 minutes or so when the stream goes live. So Robert Moffat is one of the wargaming fans out there who tends to join me on Wednesdays. So I guess Robert's popping in because he's interested in Wildlands here. This is a miniatures game that is from Osprey Games. It's designed by Martin Wallace. Martin Wallace is certainly well known in the genre of Euro games, but not necessarily for miniatures games. So interesting. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about how to play, as well as share my review of not only the core box for Wildlands, but also the 2 expansions that have come out for the game as well. They include new factions that you can battle with. So before I get into that, though, I do want to mention, wow, what a weekend of entertainment this was. It was like, not only did you have Avengers Endgame pulling in, what was it, $1.2 billion at the box office in its opening weekend, of which I was actually part of. I was there on Friday checking out the film, so that was very, very cool. Robert says, hey, I try to watch lately whenever I can live. Cool deal. Thank you, Robert. So yes, I was there opening day. I did not get an opportunity to get a ticket on Thursday night, but I was in the audience on Friday afternoon. So no spoilers, not going to spoil anything. I tremendously enjoyed it. I will say that. Then, of course, last night we had the Battle of Winterfell in Game of Thrones. People have been waiting years for this. That was impressive, very, very entertaining. It was the longest episode of Game of Thrones yet. So it clocked in at 1 hour 20 minutes. So only 3 more episodes to go till the series wraps up. Then there was some bad news this weekend. I was kind of like, hey, Netflix canceled Santa Clarita Diet, which I actually enjoyed. I thought that was a pretty good show. I thought it was funny. I thought it was entertaining. It was different. But Netflix pulled the plug on it, and I'm really surprised because Netflix spends billions of dollars on things that nobody watches, and everybody I know was watching Santa Clarita Diet. So I don't know. Maybe it'll find life at a different streaming source. Who knows? I have no clue. I mean, you'd think Netflix could at least just do one more season and close out the show, right? Bring the story to a conclusion. But who knows? We shall find out. Anyway, do want to talk about what is on the horizon this week as well as into next. But first, do want to point out that If you are a fan of the Daily Dope and the GamingGang.com, keep in mind both are not-for-profit endeavors. So if you like the show, if you like the Gaming Gang channel here on YouTube, if you like the GamingGang.com website, please consider making a small donation to Lil Bub's Big Fund and the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Yes, Lil Bub's Big Fund does provide grant monies to organizations around the United States who care for special needs animals as they await adoption. These animals could be a little long in the tooth, like yours truly, or have mobility issues, or maybe they're blind, maybe they're deaf, maybe they require medications every day. Regardless, these animals still deserve good homes and can provide loving companionship that is most certain. Anyway, I always like to float this out there. If you like the show, if you like the website, please consider making a small donation. If you do, shoot me a quick email at jeffmcaleer@thegaminggang.com. Let me know that you did. You don't have to prove it or anything like that. Just tell me you did, and I will give you a shout out on the following show if you'd like me to. I have had most people have said, nah, you don't need to do a shout out. just telling you, hey, like the show, like the website, made a little donation. So what's coming up the rest of this week? Well, up in the air on a couple of things, but tomorrow's show, I will be doing a how to play and reviewing Tiny Towns from AEG, a family-friendly town-building game. So this is one of their newest releases. On Wednesday, I am not positive because Dan Verson Games got back to me. They are supposed to be sending me some Warfighter stuff. So if that does happen, and their shipping information looked like it might arrive on Wednesday afternoon. If that's the case, I will be taking a first look and unboxing Warfighter from Dan Verson Games. Now, if that does not happen, if I do not receive that in time, I am actually going to unbox and take a first look at Time of Crisis from GMT Games. Yes, it is the Roman Empire in turmoil, as well as the expansion, the special expansion, The Age of Iron and Rust, that was released. We'll take a look at these if Warfighter does not show up. Then on Thursday's show, Thursdays I love doing my RPGs. Wednesdays are War Game Wednesdays. Thursdays are role-playing games. So I did an unboxing over the weekend. It's a standalone video. It is not part of the Daily Dope. I did an unboxing of this, shared that video on Saturday. I am going to be reviewing this on Thursday's show. See that look, right? So it's like, does that look like I'm happy? Just giving you a clue. I think the unboxing kind of gave it away a little bit too, because I was like, really? So just wait. Yes, hopefully Hasbro does not put a bounty out on me. Hey! That No Enemies Here guy, what's his name? Like Dave, Frank, something like that? He's showed up. I'm kidding, it's Dan. Hi, Dan. Good to see you popping in chat. Friday show. Yes, finally. Gonna review Forum Trajanum. It keeps getting pushed back whenever I don't do a show or whatever. It's because it's been out for a while. So, and strangely enough, I don't get a ton of people checking out my reviews for Stronghold Game stuff or the unboxings and that. And part of it, I think, is a lot of times I'm a little late to the party with some of the Stronghold Game stuff. But that will be on Friday's show. And then Monday, I am really trying to do my best to kind of do like Miniatures Mondays. I don't have an in with a lot of minis companies. But next Monday's show, I will be reviewing Fallout Wasteland Warfare from Modiphius Entertainment. This is the 2-player starter box. So that will be on Monday's show. All right, so I'm sure folks are tuning in because they want to find out more about Wildlands from Osprey Games. It's designed by Martin Wallace with artwork and graphic design provided by, I believe it is pronounced Alan Spiller, and Jan Tisserand taking a stab at those. The game is for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, plays in around 30 to 60 minutes, and it does carry an MSRP of $80. So I did an unboxing video of this very recently, have had an opportunity to play this over the weekend, so let's move on over to the other camera here. And I've got this zoomed out pretty far at the moment. I am going to zoom in a little bit, but I did want to kind of share the way the game is sort of set up. It is for 2 to 4 players. It is a fantasy miniatures game. It does have kind of a Euro game aspect to it. It is kind of abstracted as well. So, I mean, a lot of people who are used to, say, Games Workshop, as an example, you know, Warhammer 40K, where there's a bit of crunchiness in it. Every unit's got something different to it. That is not the case here. Now, that does not make this a bad game whatsoever. I'm just pointing out this is not going to be one of these miniatures games. It's going to be really, really crunchy rules-wise and mechanically. So, you have 4 different factions. They're all vying for these magical shards, which each side will have their own shards that they're trying to acquire on the board. Now, this board here is actually dual-sided. There is a dungeon side, which is actually recommended when you first learn to play, to use the dungeon side. Then there's the flip side here, which is kind of, to me, it almost looks like it's an abandoned keep of some sort. So, you've got the 2-sided board. I know there's a new board, I believe it's going to be dual-sided as well, that's coming out the end of next month. So that is on the horizon. I believe, if memory serves me correctly, it's going to carry an MSRP of $20. So Dan says, Martin Wallace is quite the prolific man. I've heard some stories about Martin Wallace that I think I will keep to myself. I have never met the man. I have never met the designer. But I have heard some strange things. But he does do a lot of designs. So Robert says, I'd love to snag Martin Wallace's Gettysburg. I have never played it. I have never played Gettysburg. What is what's the War of 1812 game that he did that had a wrinkle to it that if you could make sure that you had the right hand of cards, then you could basically win it. The design was a little bit broken. It was sort of like winter themed too. So, but I have played some Martin Wallace stuff. He is a very prolific designer. What I normally notice with Martin Wallace's designs is there's always like one wrinkle to it that you're kind of like, or sometimes it might not. Thank you, Dan. Few Acres of Snow. Appreciate it. Yes. It had to go through a bit of a redesign, I think, for the next printing, because it was sort of like, oh, well, if I play this a certain way, it's like an auto win. But anyway, I was going to say, I have played quite a few Martin Wallace designs over the years, and they're always unique. It's not like Reiner Knizia, which I'm sorry I'm picking on Reiner Knizia, but a lot of Reiner Knizia stuff is just the same designs, just rehashed, just with a new retheming, new coat of paint, but the same old game. Martin Wallace doesn't necessarily do that. So, anyway, so we've got the board here. You'll notice each of these areas have a number. So we've got numbered areas. They run from 1 to 42. Now, we also have a small deck of cards that is going to correspond to these numbers as well. Now, there are 42 cards in the deck, and depending how many players you have in the game, you're looking at each player is going to start off with 10 cards. So, Marco, hey, Robert, don't be advertising for Marco during my show. What the hell's going on? Nah, I'm kidding. I'm just joking. Anyway, so each of the players is going to receive 10 cards. So they're going to pick their faction. Most of the factions are going to have 5 characters. Some of them, like for an example, the new expansions. One has 6. The Unquiet Undead has 6 minis, and then the Adventurer Party has 4. But the ones that come in the box, each of the factions will have 5 characters. So what you're actually trying to do is, the object of the game is to score 5 points. Now, to score points, you either knock a character out from another faction, or you get one of the shards. You claim one of the shards from your faction. So those are the ways that you're going to get your 5 points. Either providing the knockout blow to another faction's character, or securing the shards for yourself. That's the only way you're going to get those 5 points. So what you're going to do is you're going to have these 10 cards. And then out of these 10 cards, you're going to decide where do you want to hide your characters to start off the battle, and where do you want the shards to the player on your right to be located. So this gives you an opportunity to kind of get an idea of where at least one of your enemies' shards are going to be located, and you can kind of try to plan ahead as far as where you're going to locate your own characters, either to try to deny them their shards or to even possibly ambush them. So yes, so Robert says, I deny any knowledge of anyone named I forgot it already. Yeah, you don't go on Marco's YouTube channel and say, hey, did you see Jeff McAleer's got that video of... I'm teasing, I'm giving you a hard time. So, as we'll see here, there's a few things to this board, this side here, that is not on the dungeon side, and I will actually get into a little more detail about that as I kind of show you the actual gameplay. But what we're going to do here is we're actually going to zoom in a little bit so we can get a better kind of idea of the board itself. So as an example here, we have 2 factions. We've got, one is the guild, and the guild are these magic users here, and they tend to be kind of fragile. They don't have a lot of health points. So each of the players is going to get a faction deck. I'm going to collect these up, and I'm going to show you these cards here. So in your faction deck, you're going to have your character cards. So we've got Garen. Garen's one of the characters here. That is actually Garen's symbol on the deck. Then we got Hugo, which I was talking about when I did the unboxing. The artwork with Wildlands, I know this is going to be a little zoomed in, but when I first saw the artwork, I saw this owl character, and the first thing I thought was, oh, it's going to be one of these anthropomorphic animal games, which it's not. There are a few characters that are kind of animal-ish. So we've got Gretchen, we've got Edith the Witch, and then we've got actually the big bruiser on the team. We've got Lunk, who is actually carrying around the library. See, it's a portable library. We'll zoom in and take a look at the miniatures as well. As I had mentioned when I did the unboxing, one thing I thought was pretty cool was that these miniatures all have an ink wash. So the details actually pop out quite a bit than just a regular, just gray plastic. So I really like that. What I would probably recommend, now I can't tell you if there's any sort of finish because it doesn't feel like that. And I would actually take like a matte finish and spray these down, just so that just through handling in that the ink doesn't lift off. I would treat them, if you're not going to paint them, I would treat them as if they were painted and give them a spray. So Robert's wife said, yeah, what's wrong with you? And smacked me on the back of my head. Yeah, that's right, Mrs. Moffat. You slap him around. You keep Rob in line there. So anyway, so we've got the characters. So basically, the character card's only going to show you some artwork of the character, which doesn't always match up with the miniature. You got to kind of, let's see. So it looks as if Yeah, it looks as if the stream dropped for a sec, so looks like we're reconnected. It's weird. So it's showing we've got 0 drop frames, but for some reason the stream dropped. So it was quick enough that I do know for a fact that YouTube will combine this both into one video. It better. That's all I gotta say. Although I am recording the show. I always record the show. So hopefully this is back up. And there we go. So yeah, Rob says it did for a quick second. Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea what that was. So anyway, so we've got the character cards for the faction. It's going to show us the symbol, and it's going to show us their health points. So as I mentioned, the guild is kind of fragile. Hugo can only take 2 hits, Gretchen 2, Edith 3, Garen 3, but Lunk can take 7. Lunk is a bad boy here, a pretty big bad boy. So we've got that. So what you're going to end up doing is, and this will actually be off on the side, is you would actually go through your 10 cards that you were dealt, and you would say, oh, okay, so yeah, I'm going to have Edith pop out there. I'm going to have Lunk pop out here. Let's do Gretchen there. Hugo there, and Garen there. And then you could just simply take your miniatures and place them where they're supposed to go. On top of the characters here. Whoops. Nope. There we go. Add Garen on Gretchen's card, or vice versa. So you're going to have your characters like this, right? Okay, so I'm going to pull these down a little bit so we can still see these icons. So now you still have 5 cards. So what you're going to end up doing with these cards is you'll actually hand them off to the next player in line so that you now know where they've got to set up their shards. But the same thing's going to happen to you. You are going to get 5 cards. Let's just grab these. That are going to be handed to you. And this is where you're going to have to put your shards on the map. So for an example, here's 36. And you'll see we've got orange and our bases are orange. So these match up. So we'd also have 28, which I think, am I covering 28 up? I might be. 23. No, actually 28's way up here. Actually off camera. 31. 10, which is also going to be, well, right there. There we go. We can get that in there. 33. Just down off this away, right there. So that's where our shards would be. That's where we need to go to collect our shards. Each of the players will also have a faction card. So it's going to give you some ideas of the actual icons that are on your cards that you're going to be utilizing, as well as kind of give you a breakdown of what cards are available, what actions are available to your faction. So, as an example, the guild here, the guild uses some magic. The guild has some actual melee fighters, especially Lunk. But they do not have any ranged units, so there's no archers or anything like that. They don't have the ability to rally, which allows you to move 2 characters at the same time. And they can fly. So I'm going to go through each of these little icons here, each of these actions to tell you exactly what those are. But if you take a look, you'll see that your faction card is going to show each of the character icons. So for an example, that's Edith right there. This is Garen. This is Hugo. This is Gretchen. And that's Lunk. See? We've got the helmet here and the helmet here. Then we've got open cards. Then it gives us a total of all the cards, all the icons that are on your deck of cards, which is right here. So you are going to start off. Let's put this back off to the side, or I can just flip this over. You're going to start off with a hand of cards. And let's grab these. Your limit for your hand size is 7 cards. So on your turn, when it's your turn, and you'll get a little marker here indicating who is the first player. Rob says his wife has smacked him a few more times now. So this will indicate who's the first player. It's important to make sure that you're marking who is the first player, because there are ways to interrupt other players' turns and start doing stuff as if it's your turn. So to kind of give you an idea, let's look at some of these cards here. Let's drop 3 of these cards, and I'll kind of show you exactly what these are. So do not worry about the artwork on each of the cards. Each of the cards' artwork is not specifically tied into the characters. It could be, but not necessarily. This artwork is just to remind you of what faction these belong to. I'm going to move that up there and move these over so we can... So these are what they call scales. So you're going to have these scales here, and then we've got these flags that are going to show us each of the actions. Now, we do have a rule book, which is pretty short. It's fairly well presented. There isn't a ton going on as far as having to learn a whole lot of different things, but even here, I'll show us the flag actions. So it shows us what these flags are, what these actions are. So for an example, that flag action there is an area attack. This flag action here is the fly. This flag action here is cover. This is a melee attack. Once again, cover and cover, fly, area attack, melee. So as we can see here, we've got melee, heavy melee, range attack, heavy range attack, area attack, shield, cover, rally, fly. Now, with the new factions for the expansions, there are also some new abilities. One action being heal, which the adventurers have. All right, so Dan's heading out. Have a good one, Dan. Thanks for popping by. So anyway, so what you'll do is you'll have a hand of cards, and you'll be able to take actions based on what these cards show. So for an example here, this is Edith. It's showing Edith could make an area attack. This is Hugo. It shows Hugo could fly. When it doesn't have a scale, that means this action is available to everyone. This does not necessarily have to be played with a specific character. So for an example here, you would play this card to have Edith make an area attack. You wouldn't play it to have Lunk do something, simply because you don't have Lunk on here, unless you wanted Lunk to take cover. So these are the different cards you're going to have. As I mentioned, you're going to have a hand of 7. We also have wild cards, just like so. So a wild card can be used for anybody. So we have wild movement, we have draw 2 cards, and we have interrupt. You remember I mentioned that you can interrupt other players' turns and start playing as if it's your turn. You need to play an interrupt card to do so. And I'm actually going to play this a little bit to kind of give you an idea of how all of this works. As far as the game board itself, there's only 2 things that you really have to pay attention to. Oops, as I knocked Hugo over. And that would be these circles here. So we have a circle there that's closed. We have a circle here that's open. So we either have light or we have dark. If it's light, that means this is open. This is open territory. If it's dark, that means that there's cover. So cover comes into play with ranged attacks. So when you have a ranged attack, you can always fire into an adjacent area. and not have to worry about cover. But if you're crossing over an area that shows, this is what they call a core, that shows that it's got cover, then you can't do so. So I'll give you a great example. Let's take James here from the Lawbringers. I think it's Lawbringers, not Lawgivers. I think it's Lawbringers. Let me double check. The faction. Yeah, the Lawbringers. Okay, so let's say we've got James from the Lawbringers, and we got Edith over here. And the Lawbringers play a card which allows James to make a ranged attack. And you can make a ranged attack to anybody in the line of sight. So it's not like, oh, you can only fire like 2 spaces. But what you got to do is you're going to go from the center of this to the center of that. And if you need to take a piece of string or something like that, I'll just use the actual book edge. But you'll notice it's going to cross through this. It's actually crossing through this little area here, which shows that there's cover. So that means that line of sight would be blocked. Very, very simple line of sight rules. Of course, if Edith was here, James could easily fire a shot at her. There are no dice in the game. Combat resolution I'll get to in a sec. Other thing to point out, you can probably see that there are arrows leading up. So there are arrows leading up on different areas of this board. The dungeon board on the other side does not have this. So if you are going to move, then what you need to do is you actually need to play 2 movement cards to be able to go up the level if the arrow is pointing in that direction. So basically what it's essentially saying is that it's just a little more difficult for a character to climb up to another level, is basically how that works. So anytime you're playing a card, you can play a card for movement as well as claiming a shard. So you've got the opportunity to do that as well. So as far as, for an example here, you wouldn't necessarily, if it was Edith, you wouldn't necessarily only be able to use that for Edith to fight. You could use that to move Edith. You could also use that to have Edith collect a shard. Hey, Vinyl Rabbit's popping in. Good to see you, Vinyl. So that kind of gives you an opportunity to always kind of be able to do something. So, for an example, just normally you just need one action to be able to move, and you move 1 space. It's only when you're going up a level in height that you have to concern yourself with playing 2. Now, let's say, for an example, remember we've got the shard. That's our shard that we want to get. If I wanted Edith to be able to claim that shard, I have to play 3 cards with Edith. But one of the cool things is, remember these wild cards? These wild cards count for any character. So I can use this as one of the 3 cards I would need to claim the shard, the magic shard that we're looking to try to get. So that's one of the cool things too. So the thing is, it's not super easy to just grab these shards when you're in a space with them. So let's play this a little bit. What are any of the other items that I should probably mention? As far as line of sight, if you're on an upper level, you can trace a line of sight to other upper levels as well as lower levels too, as long as you're not passing through any cover. Also, that if you are down here, you cannot attack with ranged combat to a higher level. You can't attack higher level. Melee attacks take place with characters that are in the same area here. So let's grab Lunk. Let's pop out Joni. There's no Chachi here. Just Jody. Let's kind of move these around a little bit. I will zoom in and kind of show off some of the miniatures towards the end. So let's get Lunk's card over here. Let's get Edith's card. And let's get James's card. And we'll get Joni's card. One thing I will point out as far as the decks. So, for an example, for the character card, if James takes 4 points of damage, he's out. You just flip the card over. Yes, I'm talking line of sight. Yep, good old wargamer lingo. Although, there is no zones of control. So, okay, one thing that I would have liked to have seen a little bit different is the different factions have different color backs to their decks. Now, you can see, as I mentioned before, don't concern yourself too much with the actual character art on the cards. It's just to remind you what faction they're part of. But I would have liked to have seen a little bit of a different color on the faction decks, simply because in case things get mixed up somehow, and everybody knows that when you're putting games away, some people aren't as careful in the process as others are. So, Vinyl says this looks like Tannenhauser. No. I mean, it may look like it, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to play like it. All right, so for an example, let's just take our 7 cards. Take our 7 cards for the Lawbringers. Take 7 cards for the Guild. Let's do that. So, as I mentioned before, you'll start off and you'll actually have a numbered card that you've got on top of your character. When it's your turn, if you have characters that have not been revealed on the board, you must reveal at least one. Now, you might be interested in just revealing all of them if you want. That's fine. But, of course, you can't perform actions with characters that have not been revealed. So, give you an example. So, let's say it was my turn. I'd say, okay, so I'm going to reveal Lunk. Well, Lunk's on space 27, and I would put Lunk's mini, which that's not Lunk, that's Lunk. That's Hugo. I would put Lunk's mini out on 27. So we're assuming we've already done this. We're already kind of fighting it out. So, let's say it's my turn. So I've got, let's put Edith there. Because we're not going to just play it where she's picking up a shard already. So I've got a wild card here. I'm looking to see, what do I have with Edith and Lunk? Well, I've got a melee for Lunk. Do I have a heavy melee? Yes, actually that is a heavy melee right there. So, melee does 1 point of damage. Heavy melee does 2 points of damage. So I could play this card. And I could play this if there were one character from the other faction in my space. I could say, okay, heavy melee, I'm attacking, and they're going to take 2 points of damage. Unless they can play a melee card themselves for that character or as a wild character. So right here, right? So remember, if it's just the flag down here, that it doesn't have the scale, that could be any character. You can block. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. It's a regular melee. That's the heavy melee. You can block a melee or a heavy melee by playing this. So if I play this, the other player could say, no, I'm going to respond and I'm going to play that to block that attack. Okay, that's fine. These would get discarded. You can play as many cards as you want in your turn, with the understanding that at the end of your turn, you are going to draw 3 cards unless you're a hand limit. Your hand limit is 7. So it would still be my turn. So I just used my turn to attack. They blocked that attack. Well, what else could I do? Well, let's see. Well, I've got Edith. I could play Edith to fly. And then Edith, I could have her fly 2 spaces. And when you're flying, you don't have to worry about the height. So for an example, that's just one move. I don't have to play 2 cards to get up to this level. But let's just say I'm going to use Edith to fly into here. Now the other player has a wild card, if I remember right, don't they? No, they don't. So they wouldn't be able to interrupt me. So I play that. I go, oh, okay, great, boom. If I wanted to, I could actually make an area attack here, but that area attack would affect everybody, including Edith and Lunk, so I'm not going to do that. So I've got it where I just would say, well, I don't know. I don't see anything that exciting here. So I'm going to end my turn. Well, once I say I'm going to end my turn, every time you take an action, you try to pause for a second to make sure that the other players have an opportunity to interrupt. So for an example, I have 2 wild cards in my hand for the guild. What do I got here? 6 cards total. So I'd end my turn. The other player would say, okay, that's fine. I would get to draw another card to bring me up to 7. Now it would be the other team. So let's say, for an example, we've got Matilda the Minotaur. Let's say, just for the sake of argument, that she was hiding out here. And the player says, okay, I'm revealing Matilda. Matilda's in spot 9. Now remember, the other team also is going to have shards laying around too that they're trying to get. So every faction is going to have 3 magic shards that they're trying to collect, as well as their enemies that they're going to fight, and you're going to try to get the 5 points. So, as an example here, what do we got from Matilda? We've got a heavy melee. We've got cover, another heavy melee. Do we have any movement for anybody? No, we don't. This would kind of stink. What have we got for... this is... Where'd she go? Oh, there we go. This is Joni. Let's look for Joni. So I've got a shield, but that's against ranged weapons. She's got a rally. She's got another rally. So let's do this. So we sit there and say, okay, Joni's going to play rally. Now what rally allows you to do is rally allows you to move a character as well as another character that's either in the same space from your faction or an adjacent space. So this is an adjacent space. So we can say, okay, Joni's going to play rally. I don't interrupt. And they say, okay, great. Might as well get Matilda out here, her card. And I say, all right, so I'm moving here with Joni. And there with Matilda. So Matilda moves in to try to battle here. And Joni moves out. Now, I could have them like both go in different directions. So they're no longer adjacent once I do the rally. But it's simply just telling me, okay, you can move 2 characters at the same time who start off adjacent. So there's our rally. So played that. Now, Matilda's going to use her heavy melee. So let's say she's using her heavy melee. I look here and say, okay, do I have anybody that I can use to stop that? Well, I've got Lunk. So when there's more than one target, the attacker gets to say, okay, I'm attacking this faction. Now, the player, the defender, gets to choose who's going to take that damage. So I could say, okay, well, Lunk's going to take that damage, but I'm going to play this card with the melee to actually cancel out that attack. Oh, okay, well, that's fine. Good for you. And then, let me make sure these are going back to the right places. So now it is still going to be the Lawbringer's turn. And the Lawbringer has, I believe, yep, they've got just a regular melee, so they can use the melee attack. Let's say I've got nothing I'm going to block it with. So I would have to sit there and say, okay, so Lunk is going to take a point of damage from that melee attack. Boom. So now he's got 7 health. If I ever get 7 or more of these, he'd be out of the game, and I would flip this on over. Now there's also the interrupt. So, whoops. As these are, there we go. On the faction card, we also have a nice little handy dandy little attack and defend. So with the arrow, that's just a ranged attack. 2 arrows, it's a heavy ranged attack. You can block it with the shield, or if you're in a location that has cover, you can also block the attack by using the cover. An area attack is defended by the shield. Area attack does a point of damage to every character, as I mentioned, who is in a location here. You are not going to want to use area attacks on an area with your own characters unless you can somehow block them taking the damage. So Robert says, I like the card mechanic in games. Sometimes you can't do what you want. That is what this exactly does, is with the way these cards are set up, there are some that have flags that are just, like an open action. So maybe it's an open attack action, or an open defense of some sort. But for the most part, you got to sit there and you got to play your cards knowing what you've got in your deck. So it also has a little bit of an aspect, not necessarily of deck building, but understanding what is in your deck. So if you're playing the guild, you can't be playing the guild expecting to be using melee or with ranged weapons, because they don't have any. They don't have any ranged weapons. Now, they can fly, they can defend pretty good, they can attack, especially with Lunk. But the thing is, and you can always look at your discards. If you've already gone through 4 heavy melee cards for Lunk, and you haven't done or haven't needed to reshuffle, you know you are not going to get another heavy melee card. So for an example here, with the Lawbringers, they're kind of a mix. Now, they're not able to fly, but they're kind of a mix of different aspects. Yes, they've got some melee attacks, they've got some ranged attacks, they've got a little bit of magic, they're pretty good defensively, they've got a lot of rally, actually, because Joni is actually the sheriff. She's the sheriff, that's why she's got the little star here. There is a little bit of background about the factions, not much, but like a paragraph or 2 to kind of give you a little bit of flavor. So, as far as the interrupt, I'll give you an example here. Let's say that the Lawbringers decide, okay, they're going to play the rally. And I assume, let's say I figure, okay, they're going to try to move. Let's say I've beaten up on Matilda here. I figure they're going to try to move Joni and Matilda out of the way. I could say, well, no, I'm going to interrupt. And that's what that exclamation point is. I use this card to interrupt. And now the game kind of becomes, now it's my turn. That's why I had mentioned before, it's important to keep track of who is the first player, who's the active player, I should say, because it's very possible, especially if you're playing with like 4 players, I could do an interrupt, somebody else could do an interrupt, everybody could be trying to interrupt your turn. So it's important to know once that interruption is over, whose turn was it again? So you make sure that you keep this, and once you end your turn, you pass it on to the next active player. So let's say, for an example, I say, no, I want to interrupt, and then I play something like, what do we got here? Let's say, for an example, I had, where's he at? What do I do? Knock one of these guys off someplace? It's like, no, there we go. Here. Let's say I had him here, and I say, no, I'm interrupting, and I play an area attack card for Galen. I play that area attack, and it'd be like, okay, well, once again, now you're playing to, like, now you're on the defensive, looking through your hand to see how you can block that area attack. Let's say you couldn't, and I'd be like, okay, well, Joni takes a point of damage. So as I pointed out, remember, these cards are all going to be off on the side. Just wanted to kind of give you an idea of how the map looks and how these characters maneuver around. So you're going to continue to play. Now, for an example, as far as that interruption, when I'm done playing my cards, I say, okay, well, I'm done. Now I'm finished. As long as no one else was interrupting, then it goes back to the active player. If there are more than one person who is actually interrupting, the person who is closest to being the next player actually gets to go first. So that's how it goes out. You can easily have 4 factions battling it out on the board here, and those move really quick. It's something else that I want to point out too is, remember I mentioned that you win the game by acquiring 5 points. You acquire those 5 points for providing a knockout blow to another character from another faction, or you claim one of your magic shards that you're trying to get. Each of those is worth a point. Once one player gets to 5 points, then no matter how many players you have in the game comes to an end. If another player, let's say you're playing with 4 factions, if another player loses all of their characters, even if no one has gotten the 5 points, the game is going to come to an end if one of the players has more points than the other players. If they do not, so let's say, for an example, you're playing 4 factions, one player, their whole team has been wiped out, but one player has 4 points and everybody else has 3. Then you'd be like, okay, well, game over. Person with the 4 points is the winner. But if everybody had 3 points, you would continue playing until another player gets 1 more point, and then the game would come to an end. So there's a little bit of tactical depth to it. Really, this is more hand management as far as knowing what cards are available to your faction, knowing what cards you have played, kind of having an understanding once you've played it enough times of what is the other faction's strength. Because you can ask, hey, do you mind if I look at your faction card? And that's fine. You can do that. That's A-okay. So, and then, as I mentioned before, you've got a little player aid on the back as well. So, it's pretty simple to get into. I taught Cameron, his friend Cameron, and Hunter how to play this in about 10 minutes. Now, it took them a little bit of time to actually kind of get a grasp of everything. But yeah, it only took them about 10 minutes to understand. Now, let's take a little closer look here. What can we use? Let's use this. Let's just take a closer look at some of the miniatures real quick. I'm not going to go through every one of the minis as I did in the unboxing. So let's just zoom in a bit. I will show you some of the miniatures here. So this is the big baddie for the guild, Lunk. And like I said, he's carrying a portable library with him. I thought that was kind of funny. Then we got Edith. Edith is the witch. So the guild is supposed to be kind of, just older. I don't want to say necessarily decrepit, but older witches and wizards. So that's why they're a bit more fragile. But they do get some area attack stuff. They get to fly. Lawgivers are tougher. So here's Matilda, the Minotaur. So the lawgivers, or lawbringers, I should say, can take a bit more damage. They're kind of well-rounded. They've got a lot of different stuff available to them. So they're a pretty cool faction. You've got the Gnomes, which are like gnomes. So they got like a lot of mechanical stuff. They have some pretty good ranged attacks as well. So here's James with his crossbow. He's one of the ranged fighters for the Lawbringers. So we've got those. So just to kind of give you an idea, I really thought the detail on these are really nice. These should paint up really, really well. They've already got the ink wash in black. If you're one of these people who likes to have that black kind of line that runs through stuff, I'm not a fan of that. I used to always do a darker color wash as opposed to having black. But hey, I completely understand people like that stuff to stick out, to be able to really pop. So there are also the 2 expansions, which I'm not going to take them out of the box. I'm just going to kind of show them off here. So we've got the Adventuring Party, which features 4 figures as well as another deck. So you've got another deck. So it's considered another faction. So one of the cool things with the 2 expansions are you can either use these as additional factions, just replacing one of the 4. And then, of course, you would have to pop out the bases, the colored bases. So you can use these as replacement factions, or you use them as almost like NPCs that can be controlled as well. So the Adventuring Party, some people think that they're heroes, some people think they're criminals. So you can play them as a faction, or you can play them as just an extra challenge for all the factions. Same works for the Unquiet Dead, which are there are 6 miniatures in this, plus a new deck. And same thing, you can use the Unquiet Dead as another faction to play, or you can utilize them as an extra challenge that the players can actually control. It's pretty wild. I really thought that was nicely done. Very nicely done as far as giving you new factions to play with, but you can also use them as just another challenge to overcome for the players themselves. So that is pretty much, in essence, Wildlands from good old Osprey Games. So what do I think of Wildlands overall? So I think the miniatures are really nicely done. I like the fact that they've got a bit of an ink wash to them. Although, as I mentioned earlier, probably want to get a flat matte finish and spray those down. Just, from handling, it's very possible you could easily kind of rub that ink wash off, even though it's kind of in the recesses of the mini. Really dig that. I like how easy it is to learn how to play Wildlands. 12-year-old. I know it's for ages 14 and up, but as long as the kids aren't going to be swallowing the little shard gems or the miniatures, I'm sure you can go all the way down, maybe even to 10 or 11. So I think it's very nicely scaled as well. You can play with 2, 3, 4. Plays about the same. Game plays a little bit longer with more players, but you also have the interrupts as well, which I think are kind of cool. Some people will hate that. I'll be the first to point that out. Some people will not like the fact that their turn can be interrupted if somebody has the cards that allow them to interrupt. Once again, this is a game where you are using a deck of cards to determine what actions are available. Some people might be frustrated that they're getting the wrong cards at the wrong time. That can happen. So this is not going to necessarily be a game for everyone out there. Also, a lot of people playing miniatures games, they like all that extra crunch. They like all those little extra different tactics depending on what weapons the character has or what have you. This is probably not going to be the sort of game for them either. But that said, I really enjoyed it. Cameron really liked it as well. So I think it's a really cool game. You get 20 miniatures for $80. So that's a fair deal. I like the fact that we're going to get some more maps that are going to come out. I got to be honest, I could easily see kind of converting the system pretty easily to the tabletop without a board, with the actual, like terrain and stuff like that. If you make like a movement action, something like up to 3 inches, and you could fight, other characters within like 2-3 inches of you, I think you could easily just utilize the decks of cards on the tabletop as opposed to utilizing the board. Now, granted, you still have to randomize where those shards are. You have to randomize where your characters are going to appear. But I could see you utilizing Wildlands as a tabletop miniatures game as opposed to kind of a miniatures-driven board game. So, like I said, components are really nice. Minis are really nice. The dex cards are okay. I would sleeve them. I do wish that the backing on the various different factions was not just a standard purple. That way, if some of the cards get mixed up while you're putting the game away, you're going to have to go screw around trying to sort those back out again. As far as negatives, personally, I really didn't have too many negatives with it outside of the card backing. And also that I would have liked to have seen a little more tactical options, a little more theme to it. Area attack, like you have an area attack for various different characters. It's all kind of the same thing. It's just an area attack. I don't know. It could be an ice storm, could be a fireball. I would have liked to have seen a little more theme to it to draw that out. But other than that, I do really like it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I give both Wildlands as well as the 2 expansions together. I'm gonna grade these together a very, very solid 8.4 out of 10. Now, that said, as I mentioned before, it is for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, plays in about 30 to 60 minutes, carries an MSRP of $80. I have seen the core game for Wildlands going for as low as about $48 online. At $48 online, I would steal this in a second. I would grab it in a second because that is a phenomenal deal, even if you were just getting it for the miniatures, because the miniatures are very, very cool. So Robert Moffat says, yeah, it looks like a cool game, and that he loves interruption mechanics. So, yeah, he says, nice rating. Yeah, it's a solid game. I enjoyed it, but I kind of looked at it more as a hand management sort of game, as opposed to looking at it as like, wow, this is a miniatures battle game. I mean, this is not Frostgrave from Osprey Games, which is a traditional styled skirmish miniatures game. This is a bit different. And that's one of the reasons I liked it as well, because it's a bit different. All right, so that is it for today's show. As I mentioned, on tomorrow's show, move some stuff around a little bit, I will be reviewing Tiny Towns from my friends over at AEG. So, as I like to point out, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, please be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, comics, movies, TV. By now, you know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. So, Dan from No Enemies Here, Vinyl Rabbit, Robert Moffat, anyone else who is watching live, thank you very much for catching the show tonight, keeping me company. And of course, those out there who are watching this after the fact, thank you very much for watching. Thanks again for watching The Daily Dope, presented by The Gaming Gang. If you like this episode, be sure to give it a quick thumbs up. And if you dig the channel, please subscribe. If you'd like to check out our previous episode, click right here. And if you want to check out a somewhat randomly selected episode, give a click right down here. It'll be like opening a box of Cracker Jacks. You just don't know what you'll get. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'm Jeff McAleer.